the demo today is going to be facial animation, and specifically facial animation tests. This is something I like to do in my free time whenever I have some, where I just want to practice a specific aspect of animation. This can be a quick body mechanics test, a quick hand test, facial test, lip sync test. These just quick little things that you can do and learn some stuff and just practice without the consequences of a large shot, something that's going to take you weeks to do. This is something that ideally should just take a day, not even like a few hours, honestly. So a couple of weeks ago we did some facial pose tests. We just went through and based on suggestions from the chat, we made a few different tests. So we had a tired face, we had a surprised face, and then we had a kind of disgusted, like, oh no, that kind of face. So we did this, and this is a fun exercise. Just find like a emotion generator online, and from there you can just create these emotions. Just make a whole bunch of them, and now we can use this for a new test, which is animating between them. And this is really cool because you start getting combinations that you might not have done normally in an acting shot. So we're going from surprised to disgust, from tired to surprised. And that can be a fun little challenge. So that's going to be the goal for today. I don't know how much we're going to get done, especially with the explanation. Normally, this is a quick test. It should only take like something like this, maybe an hour at most, something like that. Because I tend to talk a lot and will be explaining things, we'll see how much we actually get done. Now, before I actually go into the animation, I just want to show the progression of the facial expressions, just for anyone who missed out on the previous stream. So when we made these facial expressions, one thing that was very important as we were creating these was really trying to exaggerate the posing from the default posing that I tend to see with student work into something a little bit more exaggerated. So for example, when I see a lot of students do kind of a tired face, and this is something I used to do when I first started, it's something like this. Is the brows are down, the eyes are kind of down, and everything kind of droops a little bit. But it doesn't really look tired. It's a little bit more bored. It's not a terrible facial expression, but it doesn't sell anything special. So from here, we exaggerated a few different things, made his jaw drop a little bit. And a little Danny, thanks so much for the sub. Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So we dropped the jaw a little bit, and then from there, we pushed the line of action and really just pushed everything so you can feel that sagging weight to the face. Surprise, same thing. Here, we kind of had this surprised expression. The eyes are a little bit wider, but it doesn't really feel interesting. Part of that is everything is flat. This is going to be something we are always watching out for. Everything is, oops, and make sure I can see my grease pencil tool. Interesting. Why are you not showing up? I was hoping to do drawovers on this. Well, it shows up here. So everything is flat right there. Just flat and boring. We don't want that. We want visual interest, pushing the line of action of the face, pushing the contrapposto of the face if we can. So we got that, pushed it a little bit more. And then here we just tweaked the head angle and pushed a few other small elements, specifically the eyes, kind of offsetting them a little bit. Really trying to push that line of action. And now I saw a note, could the chin be moved a little bit more screen left on the surprised? Oh, definitely. So I think, let's see, which chin control would be best for this? Oh, geez, what happened? Backtrack, thank you so much for all the other gifts. Jeez, thank you so much. These 5 more gifts. Jeez, thank you so much. That's really kind of you. So, we're gonna hear the song a lot now. Yay, I like it. So let's find the chin control here. I think we could probably use this one. I don't want to move the mouth too much, but we can kind of just move the chin over a little bit and that helps to push that line of action and cleans up the silhouette. Now, there is something here that we have to be aware of, and this is the character model. In this case, because it's a quick test, there's no real like staying on model for this. We can kind of push this however we want. But if this character has a very pronounced a very pronounced chin, where you really feel that dip right here, where you go the cheek and then the chin, we wouldn't want to push this too much because we're going to lose that silhouette and it's not going to feel like that character. For example, if I go into this, we get this kind of weird lighting here instead of just pure black. But as you see here, there's this very clear silhouette. If we take the chin and move it over, see how we lose that and it rounds out the face? It softens it up a bit. In our case, is that bad? Not at all. But it is something to be aware of whenever you're doing these types of extreme facial poses. We want to watch the landmarks of the face. What makes this character feel like this character? It's very easy, especially when you have a powerful rig like this, to start taking these controls and pushing it to the point where this character doesn't feel the same anymore. If I take his head control here and like squash that down, that doesn't feel like the character we were creating. It feels like another character. Like we could really push his proportions here to something like this, but it's not the same person. So just be careful of that. I love this rig. It's so powerful. You can just push this. So you can make so many characters out of this one character. So let me take a sip of water here. Rehydrate. And let's look at the next one. So the next one was this kind of like disgusted squinting look. And here we just have the eyes down. We pushed a little asymmetry already, but overall it's again very flat. We pushed the head angle, and then we really pushed everything to create this sneer feeling. A sneer, or kind of a frown, is when everything basically comes into the center of the face right there. So everything is drawing in. So the lip is curling up here and drawing in there. Everything's coming into that point. So really trying to push that feeling in there. So we've got our 3 facial expressions. Now, like I said, our previous test, we were iterating. We made one version and then we pushed it further, made another version, pushed it further. At this point, we don't need all those versions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all my controls, and let's actually make sure my geometry is referenced and we don't need to see that anymore. So I'm going to take all of this and I'm just going to make sure everything is keyed. I don't want to accidentally lose anything on these poses. And then I'm just going to delete any keys I don't want. So delete all of these. We only have that expression now. Delete these 2. And then delete these 2. Jeez. Jeez. Backtrack. Again? Jeez, thank you so much. That's super generous of you. Man. That's 11 gifts already. And we're 14 minutes in. Jeez. Thank you so much. That's amazingly generous. I have no words for it. It's just like, wow, thank you so much. And I get to hear the songs more. Yay. My mind just blanked out. Okay, delete these keys. That's what I wanted to do. Delete them. So at this point, we now have only the facial expressions we're animating between. Just these. Now, you'll notice something, if you remember the other stream, I had animated the body and the shoulders and all of that. In this case, I didn't delete the animation on those. You can see there is still animation in the shoulders. It's just muted here. So you can see how they're brown there. That means that we can still have the animation in there. You can see it's moving. Where's the keys? They're so flat. They're still in there. They do move, but is just hidden. It's turned off for now. I still don't know what a subscribed rank does. Subscribed ranks for most streams will give you perks like giving you access to a subscriber only Discord, or in animation streams it'll give you the access to reviews, things like that. In these streams I'm still trying to figure out what I can offer for a perk. The big thing is I don't want to put any content behind a paywall, so everything is available to everyone regardless of if you can subscribe or not. I don't want to have like, oh, well, here's the subscriber section, here's the really cool stuff, and oh, you have to do this before you access to the real tips and tricks, or you have to be a subscriber in order to get feedback. I don't want any of that. I want it to be available to anyone at any time, regardless of your financial situation or if you want to subscribe or not. So I haven't found any like perks that I can give to everyone as a subscriber that doesn't take away from that. And if anyone has suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Aside from that, it's really you get some emotes. That's the big one that you get. But yeah, one day I'll find something. But we've got our facial expressions here. At this point, I can just retime them a little bit. So this pose here, for example, it doesn't have to be on frame 12. Let's move it to frame 1. And I just want a hug. A virtual hug. There you go. Now, as we go through this, we'll have our animation, and it's just going to go through these few facial poses. Now, actually, it looks like I didn't move all my animation over, so always make sure you have all of your keys selected before retiming things. That helps a lot. If you only move certain keys, you're going to mess things up. So at this point, we have our animation. You can see our facial expressions are changing, but they don't look great. It just kind of slides up, slides down. Now, I'm not going to try to play this real time because the Play Blast is not going to have the right timing anyway. But as we can see here, everything just kind of moves at the exact same time. Everything is bland and boring. So what we want to do here is we want to break down these facial poses and really get them to read clearly, believably, and as if the character is actually thinking and reacting to things. That's the tricky part. The character shouldn't just kind of slide into an expression. They should react into an expression. They should emote into an expression. This is a character that is moving, not just a rig that's sliding from pose to pose. Now, the other thing that is happening is that these are moving way too slowly. Right now, the character, it's still pretty quick. Like from frame 1 to frame 12, or sorry, frame 11. So that's 10 frames. The character is going from one expression all the way to another. That's still pretty quick, but facial expressions are much faster than that. This is way too slow for a character to just slide from one pose to the next. And you can try this yourself, just with your own face. Try to go into different expressions as slowly as you can. Like try to raise your eyebrows in a smooth motion, just like how I would move my hand very slowly, smoothly across here. Try to raise your eyebrows as smoothly as you can up and do it really slow. It takes a lot of thought to do that. You really have to concentrate on your brows, and more often than not, they're going to move in kind of this stilted way. They're just up, pause, up, pause, up, pause. Mouth corners, you have a little bit more control if you want to move them slowly, but it still takes a lot of thought to do that. We don't think when we're changing expressions. It's not like, okay, I have to smile. Wait, think of the smile. There you go. I'm smiling. No, it just happens. It's very fast. Now, we can just go in here and start throwing some animation in, hope for the best, and you could definitely do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the whole point of this exercise is to learn, to do something where we analyze what actually happens in real life and then see if we can implement it into our shot and then push it from there. Not just come up with stuff and hope for the best. Now, there are exercises where you can do that, where you are doing more cartoony transitions. But unless you understand what the actual mechanics are happening first, you're just throwing things in and hoping for the best. Yeah, moving brows down is easier than up, exactly. So when you bring your brows down, it's much easier because it's essentially you're relaxing these muscles and only activating the small muscles right here. Whereas when you're pulling it up, your whole forehead muscles, there's kind of 3 different zones here, center and then 2 on the side. All of those are having to activate to bring your brows up. So it's the same thing when you drop a smile. That's kind of easier in a way because it's the muscles here that's pulling into your cheekbones and across your face that are just relaxing versus having to pull outwards. So before I go into any animation here, let's actually analyze some reference. So this is going to be fun. Showing reference. It's always embarrassing. This is some reference I shot last week for the demo that was supposed to happen last week, where I just did an approximation of the faces. This is not going to be a like one-to-one, I'm copying this, because honestly, the rig can do things that I can't, and I don't want to copy it. I just want to analyze and understand what's going on so I can break things down more clearly. So let me just play through this here, and then we'll start diving into a few different aspects that are very important to keep in mind. So here we have the reference. They're just going from embarrassing facial poses, going from tired to surprised to disgusted. Now you can see that face is very different than the one I did in here. As I was doing it, it just didn't feel natural for me to hit this facial pose. But that's fine. It's close enough that I can get it where I need. Reference does not have to be one-to-one. That is very important to keep in mind. Your reference is a guide that helps you, but is not there to be copied and traced over. The closer you can get, the easier it is, especially if you're doing like a complex acting shot. If you can really act it out beautifully, you're just exaggerating those elements instead of having to kind of build off of it. But it doesn't have to be. So let me find that again. Now, before we go into the actual analyzing animation, there is something I do want to mention, which is making sure you know what you're looking at in terms of the frame rate. So I actually have 2 different versions here. This version was the original recording, and this was recorded at 60 frames per second. So you can see it's a lot smoother, which is really nice. The nice thing with shooting at high frame rates is that you see a lot of extra details in here. So for example, this is the 24 frames per second version, so what we're animating at. If you look at the brows here, see how as I react, we get the brows lifting up here as the eyelids go down at the same time, same frame. They're happening at the exact same time. That's nice. Oh, cool. We've got a little bit of analysis there. Cool. But if we actually look at the 60 frame per second version, look at this. You can actually see the brows react a few frames before the eyelids. The brows are actually starting to move before the eyelids start coming down. That's a really nice detail that we can put in. So instead of having the eyelids and the brows, one moves up and the other one moves down at the exact same rate, we're animating at 24 frames per second. So we want to keep it like not too offset or look weird, but we can have the brows go up quite a bit, but the eyelids only go down a little bit. So we still have that natural offset that we're seeing here at 60 frames per second, but we're building in that timing of the 24. So this is where a high frame rate video is very nice. You can really get these extra little details in there that you wouldn't normally see at 24 or at a slower frame rate. That's cool. The problem here though is I see a lot of students look at their frame rates, and usually it's 30 frames per second. That's what most phones record at, or maybe they're recording at 60. I've seen a few students do it at 100 frames per second or 120. And they start analyzing their timing here. Don't do that. Your timing is going to be all off. So, for example, when we look at this, how long does it take the browse to go up? So we see the first motion here, right there, frame 60. That's when the brows start to move upwards. And they end right around here. We'll say 66. Oh, 6 frames. It takes 6 frames for the brows to go up. No, that's 60 frames per second. The brows actually go up. So right here, they start to move 24. And they're done at 26. There you go. So they're actually moving for only 3 frames versus 6. Much faster. If you take your timing from your 60 frame per second version, your facial animation is going to be too slow. And like I said, I see this happen a lot where students are starting to analyze their facial performance and they want to see all the details. So they take slow motion video or high frame rate video, but they don't account for that change. And this applies to any reference, but facial animation is very fast. So we want to make sure we keep that consideration in there. So let's start breaking some of this motion down. Now, I think let's just stick with the 24. That way we're not bouncing back and forth too much. And we'll kind of analyze a few different things. Now, there is a fourth pose here. I have my eyes looking down at the beginning here. And then you can see the eyes look up. And then I go into the surprised. If we have time, I might build that in. The nice thing I like about this is you can see the eye dart. Look at how much my body is moving. It's not moving much at all. This is one of those things where as students start going into splines, many people, or many, not just students, many animators tend to over animate a hold. This is very based on the stylistic choice of the film. But as you can see, this is live action reference. It's real life. And look how much I'm moving. Not much. Like when my eyes come up here, not much is moving, but it is still moving. If I scrub fast enough, you can actually see that I am moving quite a bit through here. This is a moving hold. It is not the character sliding across the screen. It's just these little micro motions. And essentially what it is I'm breathing. So I'm going up and then down as I'm breathing. My heart is pumping blood through my body, which means that there's going to be these small micro motions. That's all we really need. You can keep a character extremely still in a shot. So, as we have this first eye dart, one thing I really like about this, let's zoom in here, is it's just weird to see 2 of me when I look at the actual stream. Which it shouldn't be weird because I have a twin brother. Why would it be weird? Maybe it's just because one's so much larger than the other. It's like, no. As the eyes move here, one thing to pay attention to is the difference between the eye dart of the eyeball and the eyelid. If you just kind of look at the whole eye just as a unit, it looks like it takes a lot of time. So we get the initial motion here. Well, actually, this is interesting. See this? There's this micro, it might just be an artifact from the video, but like the eye is moving down ever so slightly, like there's an anticipation there. So the eyes are holding here on frame 18. And then on the next frame, you can see the eyes move and the lids move. And then the lids stop moving right here on frame 22-ish. So 4 frames of movement right there. For the eye dart. No, that's for the eyelids. The eyelids always have a little bit of drag and kind of extra motion to them because they're just skin. There's no muscles really moving them. So once they relax, they just kind of keep sliding across the eye. If you look at just the brown of the eye here, right there, you can see it darts up right there, and then it doesn't move. It's not moving right here. The rest is just the eyelid going up right there. So the eye is darting in one frame. The rest is just the eyelid adjusting. And you can really see the shape of the eyelid here getting pulled up as the lens of the eye is moving upwards. And then same thing here. You get that blink, and it doesn't even go to a full blink. It's a half blink going through there. Okay. So there's a lot of information we can get even just from this little eye dart here. And you can see the brows aren't reacting there. Our eyes can move around without our brows having to move all the time with them. If we move the brows too much for every little eye dart and every little eye adjustment, it starts to feel very strange. But now let's go into the surprise expression. So the surprise expression, there's a lot of different things we can start looking at. One thing I always like to do first is look at the timing of things. So eyebrow, not moving on frame 23, stops moving around frame 26. So 3 frames. So our brows, let's pick a color here that'll show up. Brows from tired to surprise. It's only 3 frames to go up. Now, does that mean that the brows just hit there and stop? Where if you were to look at your curve, it starts here, whoop, and then it just flattens out and plateaus? No. Normally with facial expressions, the way I time it is from the readable expression, so in this case, the tired expression, to the moment where the brows kind of hit their peak, or the moment that you can read that expression very clearly as surprised. From there, if you actually look at the brows, especially right here, you can kind of see it a little bit more. They're starting to come down. Essentially what it is the brows, let's say you start there, frame 23. The curve goes up. We get frame 26 here. And then there's going to be a little overshoot like that. It doesn't just plateau. But at this point, it's just a moving hold versus an actual big change. And sometimes it'll go over and do something like that. There could be all sorts of different things that it does, but it doesn't just freeze. Usually there's going to be this extra little bit of motion. So be very aware of that. The timing here is not from stop to stop. It's from readable expression to readable expression. So brows take 3 frames. If we watch the blink here, one thing to pay attention to is how does the blink work timing wise? A lot of people, when they do a blink, they'll do it very even. Same frames down, same frames up. So let's say 4 frames down, 4 frames up. When you do a blink, usually one side of the blink is going to be faster than the other. So the down is going to be a little faster and the up is a little slower, or the down is a little slower, the up is a little faster. If you look at the blink here, you can kind of see there's a little anticipation right here. So frame 23, we get an antic of the eye in the eyelid here. It starts to come down, frame 24, 25, it hits the bottom here. And then from there, 26, 27, open. So it took 3 frames down, 2 frames up. It opens up very, very quickly because that's surprise. It just snaps open. And then it just holds there. So pay attention to those blinks. It's not just even both ways. Now, as we go through here, what else can we look at? Well, one thing here to pay attention to is the shape of the brows and how the inner brow doesn't just move in a straight line. If you kind of track this point right here, you'll notice that it kind of goes in a little bit of an arc right in there. Oops. And yeah, that's decent. I didn't draw it right on, but it's close enough. So right in there. Now there is a head turn right here, a little bit, but even without that head turn, there's still a little bit of an arc there. Our brows, when they go up, they get pulled outwards this way. When they come down, they go inwards towards the center here. That's where you get that little frown area right there. So when we animate these brows, we're going to want to make sure we build in that arc. And it's not a straight diagonal line either. It is a little bit of an arc, a little curve in there. What else can we see here? So we've got 3 frames for the brows to come up. The blink is, so let's just take notes here. Blink is, it was 1 frame of an anticipation. We had 3 frames down and then 2 frames up. So we have that. Now, do I have to use all of this timing? Not at all. This is just taking notes so that I have an idea of when things are happening and how I can build in my breakdowns. I'm analyzing this so that I have a starting point. This is not the, okay, the brows have to move in 3 frames. I've got no choice. It must do this. Not at all. This is just analyzing. One thing here is look at how little the mouth actually moves in reaction here. It doesn't really change. Now that's on me. I should have probably moved my mouth a little bit, but most of the motion is happening in the eyes. So when it comes to the mouth, I'll want to delay that a little bit. Usually what happens is you react in your brows or eyes first, and then it'll be the brows or eyes second. So let's say eyes, then brow, then mouth, then face, typically. Not all the time, but typically. Now, just out of curiosity, how long does it take the head to react to the motion here? So we have the brows start to move here on frame 24. That's the first frame where the brows start to move. The head reacts 2 frames after the brows move. So the brows, you can almost imagine the brows are pulling the head upwards. Now, another thing to pay attention to is how is the head moving? It's not just moving straight up. The head is dragging in from the chin. You can see the chin kind of curl in there. So that's going to be an interesting note to have. Have that reaction in the head and build in a little bit more of an arc in there. Let's see. What else can we see here? Well, one thing is very subtle, but you can actually see the nostrils actually flare out here compared to when it's relaxed. It's very subtle. You can kind of see that shape right there. So the nostrils are rounding out as the surprise comes in. Our nostrils actually move quite a bit. It's surprising when you actually start analyzing the face or really paying attention to reference how much our nose and nostrils tend to move. And it's something that a lot of animators kind of just skip over. They'll just look at the nose and go, moving on to the mouth, and the nose doesn't get touched at all. So we don't want to do that. Okay, so we've got this change here. Now, once it gets into this hold here, let's actually see how long it holds the expression. This is just going to give us a basic timing that we can put in our shot to hold and make something look somewhat believable, and then we'll change it based on what feels right. So the expression basically hits on frame 30. This is the surprised expression. Surprise! It's done moving. And then it holds. We get a little eye dart right here. You can see it right there. Very tiny. I don't even know if it comes up on the stream. Let's actually zoom in. You can see it right there. So, eye dart, and it's only 1 frame. But it kind of, you can see that eye dart happens, and then the brows release just a little bit afterwards. And then it keeps holding, and here we have the start of the next expression change. So It starts on frame 58. So this is the start of the expression change. So already we know that the surprise... What letter is that? The surprise holds for, I said frame 30, so 28 frames. There we go. We've got a basic timing. We can make this faster, we can make it slower. It all depends on how everything kind of comes together and what we feel will make it work better, but at least it's a start. Now, let's analyze from the surprise to the disgusted expression. Now here, we see the brows reacting, but as you see the brows react, look at the spacing of the brows. Notice something with the inner and outer brow. The inner brow starts to move first, especially if you look right here. There's not much movement until right around there. So the inner brow is leading the action here. The inner brow leads the action down, and as it comes down, watch the arc that it's doing. It comes down and it's not doing the same arc. It went up this way, but as it's going down, it drops down here and then curves in. So it goes up this way, down that way. It makes an arc, a circle. It doesn't just repeat. Now, this isn't always the case, but it's a nice little detail we can add in there. Now, we have the brows are leading the action. They're leading quite a bit here. And they actually, we're getting an interesting detail here where we have the brows lead. So frame 58, brows. Then you can see it right, it's kind of hard to see, but right here on frame 61, you see the cheeks move up just a little bit. You can actually see the lips starting to change here as well. So the eyes are actually reacting last here. It's brows, mouth, cheeks, and then eyes. And then you can see the eyes start to come down here as the lips start to come up. And the bottom lip isn't reacting yet. It's just the top lip. So we have 58 brows. I believe it was 61 I had said. Yeah. 61 is the that's actually right. Top lip and cheeks. The reason the cheeks are reacting is because the way your top lip moves is all the muscles in the cheek kind of pulling up here. So they're all attached. Then we have 62 eyes. Let's actually write that in intelligible way. So we get that. 61. 62. Like the eyes react here. We get a little bit of the nostrils also reacting on 62. And then the bottom lip only really pulls up and starts to move like 64, 65. Right there. So eyes, nose, 64. That looks like a 9. 64. We have nose. Now, again, this is not something that we have to use for like as a rule and it has to react at this exact time. But it gives us a building block. And then here, 67, we have the head turn. Head turn. Look at that. Almost 10 frames from the start of the brows reacting to the head actually turning. There's a big offset here. It is not everything just reacting all at once and sliding all together. if something like that happens, it's boring. It's mechanical. It's not interesting to look at. So when you're analyzing your shots, shoot some reference, or if you can't shoot good reference of your own face, look at reference. Study other animated films if you have to, but really break down how they are animating the face. That's going to get you way further than if you just jump in and start animating the face and hope for the best. That's not going to get you good results typically, especially if you're just starting out. Now, let's actually look at the timing of the individual elements. So the brows, they start moving on frame 58. So 58, they start to move. And this time you can see it's a little slower. So from 58 to 66, that's when the brows really get into their position here. You could kind of argue 65, somewhere around there, 65, 66. So we've got 8 frames there. That's pretty slow. I need to do this. I end up doing so much work because I skip all the studying. Yeah, the studying is going to help a lot. And again, it's not that we want to copy this. I know I'm repeating this often, but it's a very important point, is we're not trying to copy this. We are using this as a way to have a building block so that when we jump into our animation, we can kind of put in these numbers, or like roughly these numbers, and we know that's a solid base. And from there, we can figure out how to improve everything instead of just putting things in and, oh, well, why am I doing this? I'm moving it because I'm moving it. Yay. So really taking that time. Now, the brows take 8 frames. The rest of the face here is pretty slow. I could probably speed this up in animation. The lips, the top lip here, it kind of gets into its final position right around 67, 66. So the top lip only takes about, we'll say 6 frames to move into position. The eyes are a little faster. They get kind of into their final position right around 66. They go all the way down and they start on 62. So only 4 frames for the eyelids to come down. But this is a moment where we can kind of push them down further and then overshoot them back. So it'll take maybe 4 frames to get down, but then from there we can kind of push a little bit of a squeeze and then have them release a little bit. You can kind of feel it a little bit near the end there, but we can do it a little faster in our shot. So 4 frames. The nostrils. They pretty much stop moving right here on 66. Yeah, so similar. This, don't need that. So about 4 frames. Now we can offset this a little bit so we have a little bit more of an organic feel to that. And then the head only starts turning here, and it stops turning right around 65, 64, 65. Okay, so head turn 65. So about, wait, did I say 65? 75. We'll say 74. So that's 7 frames approximately. So we've got our basic timing there. We are looking at the arcs. So we looked at the arc of the brow. The inner brow leads first. It moves in arcing motion. The nose, if you look at the nose here, it doesn't just move up. When you do a sneer, it doesn't just go up. It's actually going in an arc. It's being pulled by the sneer, which is the muscles kind of attaching to your cheekbone here and going to the lip right there. So that means that the muscle is pulling out this way, which will also pull your nostril out in that direction. But then, as it goes up, the muscles in your eye area here start to compress, and that's when you get the like real tightness in there. And now that is starting to pull in this way. So your nostril, when it kind of flares because of this, doesn't just go straight up. It's doing this motion. Gets pulled out first and then up just a little bit. So we can try to build that in. A nice little arc in there. That'll be cool. The mouth corners, it's a little hard here because I'm not exaggerating nearly as much as my my reference. Or sorry, not my reference, in my animation. But we can still try to push some arcs in there where we will be able to kind of push the corners maybe a little out then in as they kind of narrow down. It'll depend on how far we have in our animation to go. One thing I want to really try to get here is notice the bottom lip, how the middle of the lip here is the thing that moves last. Everything else is starting to move first right here. So it's pulling from the outer edges and then it gets to the middle. There's not really any muscle here that can get pulled. So all of it's going to be reacting from the corners first and then pulling the center. It's not just going to move in one linear line. Okay, what else can we look at here? One thing I see a lot of when people do squints especially is over animating the bottom lid. Now we pushed it a lot. There's nothing wrong with exaggeration. But one thing to pay attention to is look at how much the bottom lid actually moves. It didn't move very much at all. Even when the eyes get really compressed here, the bottom lids didn't do much of the work. So always be careful how much you're pushing those bottom lids. They're essentially just flattening out here. Even here, like it's just kind of a little flatter than they were here. Okay. What else can we pick out from this? One thing that's definitely something we're going to have to pay attention to is look at the mass of the cheeks. It's kind of hard to see without like wireframe on the face. But if you kind of look at the face here, there's kind of this, you can feel a cheekbone right here. And then there's that indent right there. It's kind of sunken in there. As it comes up, you can really see it here, how all of that is really round there now. So all of that has filled up by the muscle compressing. If our rig allows it, this would be a really nice feature to add of making sure we feel that compression in those cheeks. Sometimes this will be automatic in a rig. Other times we have to push it with the like cheek puff controls or scaling certain parts of the face. Okay. So let's take this and move into our animation. If we need to, we always can open this up and look at something if we need more information. So let's actually start animating. So we took some time to analyze our animation, but this has given us a much better place to start because now we're not going to be guessing. And that is huge. As an animator, I don't want to be guessing half the time and just, well, I need to put something here. Let's try this. I want a plan of attack, even if it's just a rough one. So, for example, we have this tired expression here. And I want to add that little eye dart before we actually get into the rest of the animation. It'll make the character feel a little bit more alive. Now, there's a few things we can keep track of. If I just put this in here and let's just copy this pose here and do it on frame 4 for now, is that going to work? Is that going to be enough time to have the eyes down here, then come up, and then react? No, we're not going to have nearly enough time. One thing to keep in mind is human reaction time. So I know we've mentioned this many times on the stream, but it's always worth mentioning. At 24 frames per second, the human reaction time is about 4 to 6 frames, usually ranging more towards 6, 4 if we're really kind of paying attention. So we've got 4 to 6 frames of human reaction time. This applies to both our character and us as the audience, or the audience that you're going to show this to. We cannot show something that lasts less than 4 frames if we want the audience to register it and to understand what's going on. So for example here, if I have this first pose where the eyes are going to be down on frame 1, and then I start moving it on frame 4, the audience will never register that the eyes were down in the first place. I need more time there. Second, once the character does dart his eyes up, I will need them to hold for 4 to 6 frames before they start reacting into the surprised expression. Otherwise, the character is not going to feel like they reacted to what they saw and thought about it. It'll just be sliding into the next pose. So with this, that gives me an idea of what my first timing should be. So first pose, let's hold that for 12 frames, half a second. That should be enough for the audience to register what's going on right there. Now let's actually, I'm going to change this a little bit so we can more easily see that it's actually different. Where's my eye control? Here. And we'll shape it a little bit more later. So we've got the eyes kind of down, angled there, and then they're going to come up. We'll push the posing a little bit as we go. Now he looks up, he has to register and react. So this has to hold for probably at least 6 frames, maybe 8 because he's tired. But let's go for 6 to begin with. So that's going to be just taking this pose here, and he's just gonna stay there. So that's gonna be, and actually I mistimed this one because frame 1 to frame 13, he's holding the pose. From frame 13, and then he needs to actually look up. If we remember, the eye dart took 1 frame, the eyeball or the eyelids took 4 frames. So this pose here should actually be on frame 17, and frame 13 should just be a copy of frame 1. So from frame 1 to frame 13, there's no motion. You can see I'm scrubbing, no motion. Then we get the eye dart there. He looks up. He's going to have to hold that pose. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a technique called the walled off method, where you just take your holds and you put a start and end key. So frame 17, he looks up. He has to hold for at least 6 frames. So I'm just going to use 6 frames here. So that's going to be frame 23. They hold. And then from there, he reacts into this expression. Now, this is where, well, how long does it take to do the full expression? Well, we had our timing here. So let's come back into this. We had mapped it out. The surprise from tired. Did I write it down here? So it starts reacting about frame 23-ish, if we count the anticipation. And then we can probably stop the motion at around frame probably 31 here. The rest is just the body moving back. The rest is the face just staying in place. So from 23 to 31, that's 8 frames. There we go. That's our timing approximately for the whole expression change to happen. And then we can build in a moving hold with the actual translations and everything. So from 23, we're going to go, actually I'm following the reference pretty close here. We'll have that. So that gives us our timing for that. From here, we'll hold on this frame. I'm probably not going to hold as long as in my reference, but let's hold for maybe, let's see. What do I want? One thing, whenever I'm trying to think of things like this, I don't want to hold them everything for the same amount of time. So for example, at the beginning here, he looks so dead. We have 12 frames where he's holding here before he starts to react. I could do another 12 frames here, but that's going to feel repetitive. So maybe I'm going to push this one to hold for 16 frames, just to add some variation. If we feel it's too long, we can always shorten it later. So from 31, that's going to be 47. So I'm going to copy this over. Now we've got a hold here. And now he comes down. And once again, let's take a look at our timing here. We can change it at any point. This is just a basic putting it in, and from there we'll exaggerate and make it more interesting. So about frame 58 to, if we count the head turn here all the way, 58 to 74. So 72. There we go. We've got our animation blocked out for the most part. And then from 72, this is just going to hold. Actually, wait, did I? 47 holds for 7, then 55. Did I mistime something here? Yeah, that should have been. I forgot to move the key instead of. There we go. So the move here started again at frame. Always make sure you keep your keep tabs on your keys so you're not moving the wrong ones. So 58 to 74, that's 16 frames. So 47, 53. No, wait, 47, 63. There we go. And already I can tell that this is going to feel a little weird where you have a 16 frame hold and then a 16 frame motion. We'll change that up a little bit. And then from here, this is the actual hold right to the end there. So we've got this. Great. And let's see, how long do I want to hold at the end? Maybe just to frame, we'll go 75. That way we don't have too much extra animation to go over. There we go. So we've got our basic timing of our shot. Is it going to look good? No. But we now have these moments where you can see the character reacts and holds versus just sliding from one expression to the next. This gives us our basic structure that we can work from. So let's take this here. I'm going to save and I'm going to do a play blast of this just so we have something to fall back to and kind of compare. So let's take this here and I'm just going to do a quick play blast. Make sure I save it on my desktop. And then this is Apollo, not Apollo. Apollo facial test version 1. Okay, play blast. There we go. So we'll let this go through. Normally I would turn off the resolution gate, but it'll be fine here. I should actually just turn it off. I don't like having the resolution gate on. It always annoys me. Okay, let's do that. And it's fine here, it'll be closer. So let me do another play blast of this. And yeah. And then we'll look at it at real time just to see how it looks. And from there, we'll start to add some breakdowns. And that's when things are going to start to come to life a lot more. Okay, so here we have our animation. And is it working? Yeah. It's okay. The eye dart actually doesn't look terrible, weirdly. But especially when he scrunches his face, you can see how everything just moves at the same time. The reaction here is just everything. The head move, the eyes, the brows, the nose, the mouth, everything is just sliding together. Not only that, but if you really pay attention, you can see the teeth moving, which is something I definitely don't want to have. We can animate the teeth and move the teeth to get good, appealing poses, but we don't want to actually see the teeth moving. If that happens, we've broken the element of reality in our shot, because teeth are bone. They're into your skull. We are exaggerating this in our animation in a way that is beyond, but we don't want to push it so far that things are just moving randomly. It would be like if your bones started just like wiggling inside your body. That would look weird. And Jupit, hey, thank you so much. This year is going by so fast. Yeah, it's so weird to think that it's only, what, 4 months till 2022? It's like, what happened to 2021? 2020 already was a year that just disappeared and weirdly fell into the void. How is 2021 also doing this? It's not fair. But hope you're doing well. Hopefully the year has been good to you so far. So we've got this version here. Let's keep breaking things down. So at the beginning here, we can add a little bit of a moving hold to the character. We're going to build that in just a bit. But the first thing I want to do, let's just do something super simple. Let's get this eye dart to work correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do before I actually start putting more poses in is make sure that my existing poses are how I want them to be. So this pose here, his eyes are a little too kind of closed. We can't see the character a little bit, especially that left eye. It looks like he had a black eye. So I'm just going to repose this just a little bit. Make him feel a little bit more tired. More like that. And then on the final pose here, I want to open the eyes a little bit more. If we look at the reference, one thing you'll notice is when the eyes look down, the eyelids are pretty low. When they look up, it's very slight, but you can see how much more they've moved. So I want to kind of capture that feeling here of, as the character looks up, the top lids just kind of open up ever so slightly, as if he's starting to wake up, starting to focus on what they're looking at versus just staying totally sleeping. So we get that. Now the problem with this, there's two problems that I'm seeing right now. One is everything's moving together, and if I was to scrub through, you can see everything just moves together. That doesn't feel quite right. And then the second is that the bottom lids are moving a little too much in tandem with the top lids, especially on the screen right eye. You look at this here, see how they kind of feel like they're moving a little too close together? I'll want to adjust that to make a little bit more of a breaking up of that motion. But let's actually just add a few keys here. So the first key I want to do is just for the eye dart itself. It should not take 4 frames for that eye to move up here. It should happen in 1 frame. I'm just going to copy this over there. Oop. It pops up. And now you can see, this is weird. The eye corners are moving on their own. Everything, the top lid just stops. Everything kind of broke here. This will happen when you're starting to add breakdowns, especially on controls where you've got a lot of fine-tune elements that you've built in. You're going to get these little bits of weirdness. Is that bad? No, we just have to kind of refine it a little bit. So we get this eye dart right there. One thing I want is, let's take the eyelids here and drag them down just a little bit. So here, I want them to move up with the eye, but not so high that they feel like they're glued to the eye, but where we feel the eye kind of moving underneath it. The lower lids, if you remember, they did adjust, but they adjusted much more quickly. Basically, the lens of the eye stopped pushing on them, and they moved up, and then they kind of just stayed into position. So I'm going to get those bottom lids to ease in just a little bit more quickly. This is where the graph editor comes in really handy. So something like that. Now, I can also move the eye corners here much more quickly as well. We don't want it to feel like the eye corners are, I don't want to say they're similar to teeth, but you don't want to see them wiggling around on their own. The only way they move is usually with a squint or with the eyelids. If they're just kind of doing their own thing, it looks really weird. So I'm going to move these up and just try to get them most of the way into position. So we just get this, and then it's the eyelids that are doing most of the work. Okay. So that's feeling better. I pushed the eyelids a little too high here. Once you do the eye corners, you kind of usually have to readjust the lids. So here, as the eyelids move up, I kind of want the lower lids to stay a little lower. And I wonder if maybe I can just lower them globally here. Just a little bit. So the eyes stay just a little bit more open. Okay. Start. And the big motion should be here for the lower lids. Have that reaction to the eye. Yeah, something like that. Now I can refine this a little bit more as we go. Actually, as I'm doing this, one thing I'm just going to try. Let's see if I just remove the eye corner animation here. Let's get rid of that. It's not that big of a change. Yeah, that's better. It keeps it simple. So let me tweak the eyes again. Facial animation is not a one and done thing. This is very important. When you're doing facial animation, be prepared to kind of go back and forth with things. That's not a bad thing. It just gives you that ability to kind of refine and keep pushing, especially when you're dealing with a lot of micro controls. You're going to be doing a lot of back and forth. So, bottom lids. Let's kind of get those to move up with a little bit. And then let's take our translate Y and move these up to ease in. Like so. Yeah, that's better. So I want the bottom lids to be very subtle. I want them so that you can feel that change in there. And maybe I'll just take this and kind of push the shape over right there. So essentially trying to shape it so we can feel the lens of the eye a little bit more. So we feel the shape of the eye change. And then for the top lid, let's get back to that. We know that the top lid is going to take all 4 frames to move. So it'll go up with the eye. Maybe open it up a little bit more. And then it slides open and eases in to a stop there. Let's open this up just a little bit more. Now I could play with the curves and start tweaking it that way. I'm not a fan of that. I prefer to add keys if I can. This just gives me a little bit more control. Okay. And then make sure I hold this key there. Okay. And this is just a quick little eye dart, but you can see the amount that we're putting in here to make sure that it feels believable. It's not just move the eye and then that's it. Okay. There we go. That's feeling a little better. Now this eye here, I think I'm gonna keep this lower lid just a little lower. The reason for that is it's just kind of moving too much in tandem with the rest of the eye. I'm just gonna reduce that amount of animation there. There you go. Same thing with the other one. And maybe just a little higher there. Okay. So now we've got a fleshier eye move right there. It's very subtle. But we get that quick eye dart, and then the eyelids move. Now the spacing on the left eye, this is where you get a lot of the, get to have a lot of fun there. You notice how the left eye, the silhouette is lining up right with the top lid, and then it disappears very quickly. I'm going to adjust it so we get a little bit more of an offset there. So we get to see that eyelid just a little longer before it kind of disappears. There we go. There we go. We've got a little eye dart. Now, we could take this and move on. But one thing I like to do, even with a little eye dart like this, is add a little bit of head tilt, just so that it adds a little more keep alive to the rest of the head. So right now, the head just kind of stays there, doesn't really move. Let's have the eye dart lead the action. So we don't want the head to start moving at the exact same time. So the eyes start to move on frame 14, 15, 16. Let's do maybe 2 frames later. So the head is going to start to move up here, and let's have it just adjust. How do I want to do this? I'm going to move this down just a little bit so that the head comes up in maybe 4 frames. 4 frames should be enough for a motion like this. So you get something like that. And then no, too delayed. So I start to go up here, frame 14, and then the head comes up. Yeah. So you just get something like that. Not much. One more frame. And then it comes up, and I'm going to tone it down even more. I just want it to be a tiny little head tilt. Very subtle. And then this is where we can now start building moving holds. So you'll notice that the head tilts up, and then it just kind of freezes in place. Doesn't move. Well, when I'm building moving holds, essentially what I like to do is just look at my graph editor and think, how would that curve keep going? So he's going down, I'm exaggerating here, and he looks up, and he's tired. So what's going to happen? Is he going to go up and then like a lot of energy, and then it'll overshoot and come back down? Or is it going to be up and that kind of just like, imagine you've fallen asleep and just go up, drifting off and kind of just going in the same direction you were going. Let's see if we can build that in. So we've got this motion here. This is the head tilting upwards right there. And then there's the hold. Let's just keep adjusting it down ever so slightly so that the head gets that nice quick motion here, but then it just kind of keeps moving ever so slightly. You can see just a few pixels of motion right in there. Now, another thing I like to build in is whenever a character looks up or in any direction, try to add another rotation in there, either tilt in side to side or a twist to the head. It just makes things more interesting. So as he looks here, I can add in just a little bit of rotate Y. Let's see, which way? Let's go the other way. So the head comes up and then over. Now you can see right now it doesn't feel too good. So we're just going to take this here and add a little overshoot. In this case, I'm going to use the graph editor to help me build this out because it's just going to make it a lot easier to get the subtle motions. And then let's ease that in here. From there, I can just add some keys, boop, boop, and use this to kind of refine my animation. Okay, something like that, maybe a little less, and make this more subtle too. Let's see, are we using the arrow keys to subtly move the values in the graph editor? No, I just zoom in and use the tablet. I very rarely use the arrow keys. So we get a motion like that. I think I can tone this down. See how it kind of feels like it's a mirror if we create a line there? I don't want that. I want this to be nice and subtle. So just a little bit of an overshoot there. There we go. And I think I could even tone it down a little bit, but I'd rather have it be a little too much right now, and I can always scale it down later. It's much easier to know if something's working when the motions are a little bit bigger. There we go. So we've got our first motion here. At the very beginning, I do want to build in a moving hold right here. So let's see, how do I want to build the moving hold here? I do have some neck animation here. So maybe very subtly, we could have the character kind of leaning forward as they're kind of like falling asleep, essentially. So we just have the head kind of drifting down before he looks up. And then as he looks up here, maybe the head will come back up just a tiny bit. Nah, let's keep it down. So yeah, the head comes down here very subtly. How long do I want it to last? Let's add another key here. You'll notice I'm not worrying now about having everything on the same frame. I'm just building things in to get it to feel like there's these nice natural offsets. Okay. Maybe add just a little bit more of a moving hold here. Very subtle. And this is something I always try to avoid. Right now, the curve here is feeling a little even and boring. So I'm just going to try and push this to be a little bit more dynamic. I just like looking at the graph editor and trying to make sure that the curves don't feel like they're just kind of linear. This is a little too much for a moving hold. let's take all of this. It's not bad. And I'm just going to scale it down. Zip. So you can see it's just a few pixels if you watch that cheek right there. Just a tiny little bit of motion. And let's not make it so it's just the neck alone. Let's add just a little twist to the head as well. So what if I use this a little bit and kind of build in a curve here? We just have this subtle like adjustment and it'll flow into the next motion there. Something like that. This motion is too big still. So I'm just kind of getting this nice subtle motion in there. Okay. And then I do want to add just a little bit more in the rotate X, just so that it isn't flat as well. So as he comes down here, let's kind of have the head tilt down first and kind of lead with the nose. Very subtle. If I was to exaggerate this here, just to show off a little bit more what's happening, essentially what I want is this feeling of the head to kind of tilt down and almost drag his head forward right there, very subtly. I'm just going to take this and scale it down. There we go. Now, this might be too much still, but I'd rather have it a little too much and we can always tone it down, like I said before. So we've got that. Well, that was the easy one. That's the eye blink, or not even the eye blink, the eye dart. Okay. Now, actually, before I go too far, let's actually put zones in our animation. This is something I like to do, especially when you start getting into these offsets and everything. It can be kind of tricky to see where things are. So let me, and I just noticed my graph editor, or sorry, my timeline isn't really visible, so I'll make that a little bit bigger for everyone to see. So if we remember correctly, our first hold is from frame 1 to 13. So I'm going to take this range here. I'm going to click on the bookmark button here in Maya. And this is going to be my first hold. So this is going to be tired hold. And let's make the holds, we'll make them red. There we go. You can see how that colors that moment there. Now our next hold is from frame 16 to frame 20, I believe. No, 23. 16 to 23. There we go. That's 24. There we go. And so this is going to be our next hold. And this is the, I won't even worry with a name. That's our next hold where he looks up and just kind of stays there. Then from 23, we have the surprise expression there. 31 to 47. That's our next hold. And then we have our last hold at the end here. So why is this helpful? Well, now I can very easily see when the characters are supposed to start their main facial motions and when they're supposed to stop. I didn't do this one right. That was supposed to be 17. So let me edit my bookmark here. So my second one was 17 or 18, I believe. Yeah, we'll just keep that. It's fine. There we go. So we've got that. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question. What do you think the maximum age for an animator in the market is? Any age, honestly. If you're already in the animation industry, you can keep animating until you're 60, 70, 80, whatever. As long as you keep animating, you have good work, you're gonna still animate. Like Glenn Keane, James Baxter, all of these great animators, they're still animating. And yeah, there's no stopping them. In terms of getting started with animation, once again, it's pretty much any age. I know people who have started learning how to animate when they were in their 50s, and now they're working at a studio. There's no age where like you're too late to start animating. If it's something you want to do, do it. The only thing that is going to limit, honestly, is how far you get. Because animation takes time, you're just going to do less animations in the grand scheme of things. But in general, you can learn animation, get it into a studio within a few years. So yeah, it really is based on your skill. Oh, David, if we have time, I can definitely take a look at your shot. It'll all depend on how much time we have, because I do want to at least get this expression here done. Because this is where we start getting into the really fun stuff. And Jérôme, bonjour! It's been a while. So let's take a look at this motion here. So this is the tired to the surprise. Now this is where we're going to have a lot more fun to really break things down. Now before I start breaking this down, and hey Jérôme, thank you so much for the sub. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So here, we really want to start breaking things down and not have everything react at the same time. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the head doesn't start moving too soon. If we remember in our reference here, so let me bring this over. In the reference, you can see how the expression starts moving here on frame 23, but the head only starts moving on 26, so 3 frames later. So in our case, we want to do the same thing. And I'm starting with the head because everything on the face is going to be based on the head angle, so I want to get that to feel right first. So from frame 23, we go to frame 26. Yeah, that should be good. And I'm just going to take my neck and head controls and copy those keys over. So the head stays still, and now you can see the face react first, and then the head goes. Now, from here, let's add just a few quick breakdowns to the head and neck, just to make this a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that the neck eases out a little bit more. It's kind of just snapping out too quickly. You can see that curve right there. Let's ease that a little bit. So the neck starts to go first, and maybe a little faster than that. And then as it comes through, it's got this shock to it. I can add just a little overshoot here. So now this is going to be a big overshoot. The neck goes back, and you can see how it keeps moving back as it goes through here. It doesn't just hit a wall and stop. So let's actually build this in a little bit more cleanly. I want that overshoot maybe for 3 frames. We'll push this over here a little bit. Push that down just a bit. And then have the head settle by this point here. We just build in that little bit of an overshoot. And then you see how this curve is linear? I don't like linear curves. Usually that means something's boring in your animation. And Fraternity, hello! Will I be doing some reviews today? If I have time, I'd be happy to do reviews. It depends on how much I can get done on this. But yeah, if we have time, definitely we can do some. Okay, the neck is kind of bouncing a little too much here, so I'm just going to ease that a little bit. I want the overshoot to be very subtle, not to be this big, like, snapping motion here. I don't want him to break his neck as he goes up there. Oh, I joined late, but how do you hide the body? Actually, I didn't cover that, so that's actually a good thing to cover. You'll notice that the body isn't showing here. What I did with that is, if you go to Show, Isolate Select in your viewport, there's this option View Selected. So you'll see the whole body is actually there. What I did was I just selected the geometry of the body. So on this rig, open up your display layers, select the geometry of the rig, and only select the faces you want, as well as the hair, eyebrow geometry, all of that. Then go into Show, Isolate Select, and hit View Selected. Once you do that, it'll just show the head. Now you'll notice that I didn't have anything selected when I did this. This is because once I had this view the way I wanted to, I just went to Isolate Select, and I created a bookmark. So I just went to Bookmarks, Bookmark Current Objects, and now because this is checked, I can easily just turn this on and off and just get the head and not have to worry about any of the body in there. And this just makes it nice whenever you're doing like a very focused study, where you don't have to focus on anything else. So if I just wanted to animate the hand, I could hide the whole arm and just have the hand in there. Is this the same as Control 1? Yeah, so Control 1 is the shortcut, and you can also click on it right here. This is Isolate Select right there in the viewport. So because I have my bookmark checked, I can just turn it on and off very quickly right there. So yeah, I really like this thing. And I use this a lot when I want to focus on just one body part. So just the hips moving through the scene, or just like the arm, and polish up the arm without focusing on anything else. And for animation tests, it's really nice because it just makes it a lot easier to keep things simple. Suddenly hearing hi the body had me shook. Stream went dark. Okay. So we've got the neck kind of blocked out here. Let's do a quick bit with the head. So with the head, what I want to do is add a little offset where we have the neck start moving right here. But you see how the head is also moving up. The neck is moving up, the head is moving up at the same time. I want it so that the head drags down, then comes up. So probably, let's do 2 frames here. I'm going to just drag this head down a little bit. I like looking at the graph editor when I'm doing changes like this. It makes it a lot easier to just focus on how far I'm going. So we get this, and I want between this pose and this pose, I want a little drag on that chin. So I'm just watching the spacing on the chin here. See if I can get that downward swoop. And just doing this, see how now we get that little bit of an offset in there? You feel the head moving back, but the head is coming down as well. It's rotating down. I just thought it would be funny to have a talking head in a shot. Oh, you can definitely do that. Or if you wanted to do an Addams Family type shot with Thing, the hand that walks around, you could take whatever rig you want, hide the rest of the body, and just have an IK hand and just animate it crawling across the ground. So you could have like a creepy Addams Family style house with something like that. Or if you want to animate just like feet moving around and like walking around, or just shoes even, you could animate some ghost shoes walking in your scene just by hiding the rig, and you're animating a full rig essentially, but just seeing the shoes. This is a really cool method of just kind of giving yourself more flexibility without a ton of extra work and like finding a hand rig. Well, you don't need it. Every rig, most rigs, I should say, has a hand that you can just hide the rest of. So we get this drag here. Now, as it comes up here, it's going up too quickly, this change of direction. One thing I'm focusing on when I'm doing stuff like this is the bouncing ball. So as the head changes direction here, I'm thinking of that frame before, frame after. So if you have a bouncing ball come in here and it's jumping in this direction, your frame before the contact is going to be usually higher than the frame after right here. Well, the same happens in a change of direction. You have a change of direction, you have your extreme, and ran out of space to draw here. You have your extreme, which you can consider as a contact. Your contact is the extreme down. So if you have a change in direction here, the frame before is typically wider than the frame after because of the momentum in there. So with that in mind, if we look at this, you can kind of see that the frame, if I actually put in a key, let's like this, a key here and a key here, the frame after this extreme down is much lower than the frame before. This means that the head is bouncing. As he's getting dragged up, he's bouncing his head up off of a surface, essentially. What I want to do is make it so that it's a little bit more of an ease here. Right in there. Now I don't have to follow it exactly, but I can try to put a little bit more of an ease right in there. And now, as the head drags up, we get more weight to the head right in there. I'm using the bouncing ball principles to kind of build in this extra motion in there. Now, as it comes up, we definitely want to add an overshoot in here. Not that much. So I might offset this frame. Like I said, I don't really care about keeping everything all on the same frame anymore. At this point, it's doing what I need to make this feel good. So it comes up, and we get just that little bit of an overshoot in the nose. Something like that. And let's kind of push this ease right in there. Okay, we'll work on the moving holds later. Honestly, the moving holds are not the important part of this test. So we've got that, but I do want to add a little bit. Oh, and I just noticed my camera froze. See, this is just holding a pose. You just hold it as much as you can. There you go. So one thing I do want to do is exaggerate my rotate Y here. As the character turns their head, which direction is it going to be over here? Okay. Let's drag that a little bit. We get that little bit of an offset in that rotation. And then let's add quite a big overshoot here. Something like that. And then I might just keep going with that head tilt right in there. So he's almost like just pulling his head away from the thing as he goes. And let's add a little bit more to the spacing here, make it a little bit more dynamic. Too much. Okay. think maybe I can tilt the head back this way. And then push this a little bit more. Okay. Now, you notice here how his head kind of is just tilting or rotating when nothing else is moving. I don't want to have that, so I'm going to try to get this to ease in before we get to that point. I don't like it when we get that feeling of just like a plateau to something. There you go. That rounds it out just a little bit more. Okay. Now we have a little bit more of a fun motion in there to the head. Let's actually compare. So you can see here how the old motion was just straight and boring, and how everything moves exactly together. Nah, not interesting. Now, we haven't even touched the face yet, but see how you can kind of feel that head tilt and all of that extra motion in there? And I haven't even touched the rotate Z on. I could definitely add a little bit more. Let's add some drag to the head here. So the forehead kind of drags back. Right there. And then there's a little overshoot here. Offset that one frame. So I'm just kind of tweaking my curves, getting a little arc if I can. I really don't want too much in the rotate Z. But it just kind of gives a little bit more life in there. Yeah, we'll save it for now. Cool. So actually I should save the file as I say that. Okay, did it save? Okay, it did. So from here, let's start breaking down the facial expressions. So if we remember from our analysis of the facial expressions, what we don't want is everything reacting at the exact same time. If you look at this right now, you can see the eyes, brows, and even the mouth all start reacting all together. We don't want that. What we want is for the brows to start. So actually, let's look at the reference here. So once again, brows are the things that start, then the eyes. Now here it looks like they're both reacting at the same time. If you actually look at your higher frame rate version, so I record a 60 frame per second version, you can actually see the eyebrows start first and then the eyelids. So I'm going to try to use that a little bit. So that, and then it goes into the rest of the face. So let's break things down here. So as it goes through, our first motion is going to be here on frame 24. That's going to be the brows raising up. So I'm going to take my brow animation here. Let's set a key here. And this first key is not going to be too important, but I can add just a little bit of lead maybe on the outer brow. So it's almost like you can feel a little bit of that confusion. It's not just the brows leading up evenly. It's coming up in confusion first. And then I could even like tone this one down just a little bit. So we just get a little bit of lead. You can see now how over this one frame, we feel the outer edge start to move up first. And then the brows, let's actually just get the brows kind of in place here. The brows only took 3 frames, just 3, to get from start to finish. So from 23 here the brows should be done moving by around 26. So they're already going to be in this position pretty much. And actually, it'll help if I actually select all the brow controls and not just the one. So let's do that. Now, this is a nice moment because we're going to be selecting the brows and like putting a lot of keys. This is a moment where I might make some quick selection sets. So for example, here, I'll just select all my brow controls, go to create, sets, quick select set, and let's call this brows, add to shelf. And now I have a button right up here to easily select the brows. If you have Animbot, there's a really cool tool that allows you to do all that within Animbot. If you don't have Animbot, you can use this. I do have Animbot, but we'll show it this way. So we'll set another key here and copy our brows there. Look how fast they move now. And see how that suddenly changes that whole reaction where the brows really shoot up quick. And then we get the rest reacting afterwards. Already we're starting to get that breakup of motion. So the brows lead a little bit up here. Maybe we'll go just a little higher. And then what we don't want is a middle pose. Your spacing for brows and for facial features in general, you don't want them to be linear, where you have a key and then a middle pose and then another key. And then just basic ease in, ease out, something like that. Normally what you want is really push the ease in, ease out. And, oop, that was a weird line. Like that. And then the middle pose, really favor one of the other sides. So you're skipping the middle. This isn't a hard and fast rule. You don't always have to do this, but it tends to make facial poses just read better. So for example, here, you can see how that brow pose is kind of in the center between these two right there. So I'll just go in, set a key, and favor the upper pose there. And let's actually make sure I don't select the middle controls here, which I accidentally tweaked here, I think. Yeah, it's fine. And let's bring these up higher. So we favor that top pose there. See how this feels. So now we get that. You can see how they just kind of start moving, pop, and then settle. Now we could do that, or we could favor the lower pose. So I'm going to bring these down. There's no like hard, fast rule here. It's just whichever feels better. Then it goes up and then pops up into there. I think that's what I want because that's going to add a little bit more shock and surprise right in there. And it'll also allow us to kind of ease out just a little bit more here, which I do want to do. Now, we just kind of move things evenly here. Let's see if we can add a little bit more offset. So maybe that outer brow goes up a little faster. We kind of get a little bit of an offset there. So I really want to feel like the screen right brow is leading this action. Where we get that pull up here. And then everything else kind of gets dragged along with it. Is just going to help add a little bit more variation versus just the brows going straight up and down. So we get something like this, I think. Let's make sure this isn't tweaked because that's going to start offsetting some things in weird ways. Okay. I think I can hold this down a little bit more, just kind of push the curvature of the brow a little bit more. And then we pop open. So something like that. Now, Does that work? Well, it's broken down a little bit better, but the problem here now is that we're just stopping the brows. They just hit and freeze. That is not good. Brows should not just stop in place. They should either overshoot, so they go up and then settle back down, or they should ease into their final pose over a long span of time. So here they hit, and because they're so kind of extreme, I think I'll put in an overshoot here. Let's see. It really, both would work. Let's actually do the ease first, just because it's going to be easier to show and see how that feels. So I'm probably going to have this ease over maybe 4 frames. Something like that. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take these keys here, move them down slightly. So now you can see how the brow, it doesn't stop completely. It goes up, and then you just feel that slight continuing motion right in there. That's it. So now they don't hit a wall as they go up. It just softens it ever so slightly. Now I think I can push this right in the middle there just a little bit more. So we start to get that. Okay. Now another area that I can push the brows, if you remember, the inner brow doesn't move in a straight line or just straight up and down. So this is going to be the translate X of the inner brow. And essentially, I want to add an arc in here. And the arc is kind of a upwards and then out. So let's kind of focus on this one first. Our translate X, actually, oops, wrong control, that one. Our translate X here, we want it to go up first, so it doesn't have too much side-to-side motion. And then here, let's kind of keep it in a little bit more. And then it comes up, and then it'll ease inwards just a little bit. Very slight. We can actually probably exaggerate this quite a bit here and have this come out a little bit more. So it just kind of puts a little bit of an arc in there. Let's do the same with this one. This one's going to be a lot less, but we can at least push it in there. So a little bit more like that. And then make sure it eases so it doesn't just hit a wall. And let's bring it in a little bit more. Quite a bit more. I think we could push this one a bit more too. I don't want to go too far because then it'll start kind of killing the believability of the motion, but I do want to make it enough so that we can read the difference. Okay. So that feels better. Let's do the eyes now. So for the eyes, the main thing that I'm going to do is first build in 1 frame of anticipation. So we have the brows start moving up here on frame 24. On frame 23, I'm just going to have the eyelids open up just a little bit. For 1 frame, we just get this like little slight opening of the eyes. Maybe we'll touch a little bit on the lower lid as well. It's not going to be much, but it's just going to be enough that we kind of, it essentially the reason for this, you can kind of see it a little bit in the reference, but the main reason for this is so that as an audience, we are drawn to the eyes of the character. Over this 1 frame, We could be looking at anything else. We're wondering, oh, what's this person looking at? What did they notice? And this little eye dart, even though it's one frame, we're not going to really, or not eye dart, anticipation in the eyelids. We're not really going to notice it per se. It's not going to be a something that just like pops. But what it will do is bring our attention to the character's eyes. And I forgot to set a key here for some reason. Why is it not setting a key? Oh, that's why. There we go. Okay, so let's have that go up just a little bit. Okay, I think this is going down too far. Same with the other one. Doesn't help that I accidentally didn't key things properly. Okay. So we get that. And now you'll notice how the eyes are opening up at the same time as the brows. Well, if we look at our reference, it actually does the opposite. Whereas the brows are going up, the eyes close. And we actually took some timing here. So we have 1 frame up, 3 frames down, and then 2 frames up again. So let's do that super quick here. Build that in. So we get that 1 frame up right here. Now, on this frame, the brows start to move. And we're going to start to close the eyelids here. Now, the big thing is I want the brows to feel like they lead the action. A little lower. So I want the brows to start moving up. And actually, let's do this. Let's actually go to the closed pose before we just do frame by frame. So 23, it takes 3 frames down, so 26. Maybe we'll do 2 frames because I don't want it to be too late. 24, the eyes will be closed. We could do a full blink here or a half blink. Either are good. He looks so dead. Let's see. What do I want to do? Let's do a full blink. It just adds to the squash and stretch. And when I do blinks, one thing I like to do is I'll just zero out the eyelid shapes, because you'll notice there's a lot of other translations. And what that does is it's going to make it hard to line up the eyelids with each other. So I'll just reset them and then close them again. And then I can properly get the lids to close more easily. So actually, no, I don't want to do a full blink. I want this to be fast. So we'll do a half blink. Kind of close the eyes here somewhat. And then we get that pull up here. And the eyelids are going to be basically open most of the way here. Something like that with a nice ease at the end there. So you get this motion here. Now, what's not working here? Well, once again, it's the spacing. Once we put our poses in, we want to break up the spacing so it's not too linear. For example, here at the beginning, you can see how the eyelid is the thing that's kind of moving the most right now. We want the brow to be the thing that feels like it's moving the most. So I'm just going to take this and just add a little bit of an ease out here. So We feel the brow here moving the most. The eyelid is starting to move, closes, and then starts to open there. Now when it starts to open, it's kind of getting pulled a little too quickly. So I'm going to kind of drag it down a little bit more. So we get that kind of drag upwards here. Now he looks a little bit bored here, so I'm just going to raise it up just a tad. I might add one more frame in there. We'll see how it looks at speed. This is surprise, so I don't want him to be too slow with it. And we'll get a nice slow hold here. So right now it's going from 27 to 31. That's 4 frames. Let's give it a little bit more time. And make sure it doesn't overshoot. Eyelids can take a long time to fully open up. It'll make it feel nice and fleshy. Okay. Let's see. There's some questions here. What is the purpose of a half blink? What are you trying to accomplish with it? It's just a variation. It's essentially sometimes we only do a half blink. Our eyes only close halfway before going up all the way. So in this case, it is just a different way of approaching it. I could do a full blink. I could not. It's in this case, if I do a full blink, I would want to hold it typically for 2 frames. That way you can really register the blink and it doesn't look like a pop. Because I want this to be very fast, I would only be able to close it for 1 frame, which could create that visual pop where you essentially lose the eyes, the white of the eyes for just 1 frame and then white again. And that can kind of feel weird sometimes. So I'm going with a half blink just to see if that kind of feels a little bit better. And that is Blue Pencil too. So this plugin right here, this is all Blue Pencil. Okay. Now let's kind of push the lower lids here because they are just sliding down slowly, which we don't want. On the blink, they should be kind of, or the half blink, they should be kind of staying in position here and then opening up. And similar, we can add just a little bit more of a hold there, so we just get a little extra motion right through there. Definitely gonna have to tweak the moving hold here. His head's just kind of sliding across right there. I think I could almost add 1 frame to the change here, just to kind of tie it a little bit more with the head motion, but we'll see how it looks at speed. Once we have it at speed, we'll be able to tell how it's feeling. Okay. So we've got the eyes pretty much in place. We can come in and do a little bit more refining later, but for now, it's pretty much there. The nose, let's see. One thing I want to do, so it was, let me look at my reference here. Browse. Yeah, the head is taking too long. That's what's causing this to look weird. I need to take my neck and head animation and offset it. It should happen just as the brows are coming up, like right around here, not after it. Otherwise it feels like 1, 2, just 2 separate things happening versus a connected sequence of events, if that makes sense. Let's try this. That feels a little bit better. Oop. Let's see how this feels. Yeah, that feels better. This eyelid right now is kind of flickering. I want to fix that. So let's go in here. And then we'll do the mouth super quick. Nothing super quick. So I think I can just minimize this quite a bit. I want to feel it more than I see it. Okay. So let's go to the mouth here. And I'm just going to select all the mouth controls right there. And essentially what I want to do is just make the mouth move much quicker. Right now it's taking 23 to 31 frames, so 6 frames to do this whole transition. I kind of wanted to just do maybe 4 frames. And I want it to happen maybe, so let's see, brows react here 24, then eyes 25, then the mouth, yeah, maybe we'll have the mouth start reacting here on frame 26. So I'm just going to hold this pose here for a little longer and then have it change more quickly right there. So now it only takes about 4 frames to change. And actually, let's move this in as well. So now it takes 4 frames to change. And then, just to kind of block it in really quickly, I'm just going to ease that motion in a little bit more. So let's ease out a little bit. Now, if you have a tween machine, this is pretty easy. You can just like push your tween keys in there and very much favor a pose. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this back a little bit, set a key here, and then push it forward. And essentially what that does is enhances that ease out right there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this one here. So now I have a more extreme ease in, ease out. A much faster change there. The middle is kind of linear right now, so I'm probably going to favor one pose over the other. Which pose do I want to favor? Let's do this one. So if you don't have a tween machine, or tween tool, you can do something like this. There we go. So now we've got a much snappier motion. Now the problem is it's a little too snappy. You can see especially here, it just pops. Well, at this point I can just go in and tweak certain controls to help add some arcs and refine things. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the teeth here don't move while we can see them until they're gone here, and then I can just copy this over. So teeth don't move, and then let's actually just move them down a little bit here. Then they're gone. And then same with the top teeth. Let's make sure they're not slipping in the mouth there. So essentially over one frame, I'm just moving them into position. Okay, teeth are good. Let's do the mouth corners first. Let's see, actually. Just looking at all my controls here. Yeah, the mouth corner here is moving up too quickly right there. I'm going to bring this down. So we feel that the lip kind of lead the action here a little bit more. And then the mouth corner gets dragged up from there. And maybe push this in a little bit more. So then it comes out a little bit. So we build a little bit of an arc in that mouth corner. And I'll be able to add a little bit of an ease later. I think this shape is getting a little complex. So I'm going to bring this down here to that. So I'm just looking at the inner portion of the mouth, and I essentially just trying to make sure that it looks appealing. And we get this nice kind of arcing motion to the mouth. I think I can probably bring the mouth corner in a little bit more here. Kind of lead that action. Try to avoid any big pops in there. Okay. Now here, see how the shape of the mouth is kind of popping? We're going from this shape here, and then over the next frame, we're kind of reversing it like that. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do want to see if I can kind of make that a little bit of a smoother transition. It should still be quick, but I don't want it to just kind of snap from one to the next without cause. Now, another thing we can do with this is we can add a little drag to the lips. So as he kind of comes up here, let's actually set a key right there. I can kind of drag the lips down, maybe out just a little bit. We kind of get this kind of fleshy pull of the mouth. Before it comes up. And yeah, something happened with this pose. Let's see what happened with this pose. Let's just keep that mouth corner down there. Okay. So, one thing that's happening here is you see how the teeth are almost flashing in the mouth? That's something I definitely want to avoid. So, as he comes up here, let's maybe close the lip. For a couple of frames. And then as he opens it, let's make sure that we can see that those top teeth just a little bit. Right there. This will essentially allow us to reset the teeth without the audience kind of noticing. Now here, this is going up way too high. See how it's kind of bouncing? It goes up there and then it drops down. So I don't want that to happen. There we go. Closes. I think I can maybe push the mouth corner here in just a little bit more. Trying to push that arc. Okay. I feel like there's a bounce in there. See right there? That's right here. This needs to be in more. This is where the graph editor comes in really handy. Finding these little moments. There we go. should the mouth close because he tenses up? He's not really tensing up. It's more of just a, like, what am I looking at? So it's a little bit more like a mix of slack jawed. Honestly, you could do both. If you really wanted to tense, you could have that mouth closed up all the way. It really depends on what you want to go with. Go for on this. Brows, eyes, mouth. Feel like this. Oh, I know what it is. That mouth corner on the right side feels a little kind of weird. I think it's the rotation of this control here. Which I'm going to have to work with for now. We can always tweak this later. Okay, I don't want to get too caught up in like polishing little details here. Okay, so something like that for now. Now we could push this quite a bit. Like this is just a tiny little bit here. If we wanted to, we could have the mouth really drop down as it closes as well. So it kind of stretches his face. Let's actually make sure I set a key here. So the mouth closes and like drops down before coming back up. Add a little extra motion in there. A little drag to those lips. Maybe not quite so low there. Then ease that up here. I could even add a little drag to the side here. We'll see how that feels. It might be a little too much, but we can always tone it down. Yeah, that's definitely way too much. But you can see how that adds a little bit of an arc to the mouth. Let's see if my... No, it doesn't want to draw. Why not? I always forget what, is it, Hey! Zumbrin, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, I know why. It's because I have Isolate Select turned on. So let's only show polygons. So if we turn this off, there we go. Now we can draw. So if I, yeah, let's do this here. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just trying to add this arc to the mouth there. So it's not just up and down, or it's not just closing in very boringly. I want to add an extra layer in there. That'll help just make the face a little fleshier. Okay. Now, the other thing I can push here is the nose. We saw in the reference here that the nostrils flare quite a bit. I believe that's these controls here. So let's actually, there's a flare attribute right here. Perfect. So let's actually flare the nostrils. And could you take a look at my shots? If we have time, I'd be happy to take a look at everyone's shots here. It'll all depend on if we have some time. So I think once he starts coming up here, frame 27, let's start flaring the nostrils and kind of flare them out here and have them kind of go out, and we'll keep them flared. So it's just a subtle thing, but we should hopefully be able to feel that as it goes through. And once again, I like to add breakdowns, even on quick motions like this, just to help make the motions a little less linear. How far can I push this nostril flare? Hey! Minim, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm glad the streams are helpful. Hopefully, I kind of feel like I'm going back and forth on a lot of different things here. But if anyone has questions about any of this, definitely let me know. If there's anything particular you want me to go over and explain a little bit more in detail, just let me know. I'm adding a little translation to the nose here just so we can kind of feel that outer edge move as well. And I can add maybe a little anticipation here where the nostril kind of sinks in and maybe gets stretched down just a little bit with the mouth. Yeah, that's too much. Yeah, so something like that. Okay. The head definitely has a weird settle at the end here. Right here. It kind of drifts off in a weird direction, which I'm not a fan of. Let's see. I think it needs to arc back this way. The neck, I think. Too much motion on the neck. So let's tone that down. Yeah. And overshoot like that. Too much. It should just be a nice, like, once he gets up into that position, just hold. The rotate X needs a little adjustment. Kind of bouncing a little too much. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So something like that. You tend to add breathing when you polish your animation. It depends on the shot. A lot of shots when your characters are moving really quickly, unless they're like really out of breath, you don't need to add breathing because no one's going to really notice. But for something like this, if a character was just kind of sitting still, I might add a little bit of a breath cycle in there to help keep the character alive. It really depends on the style of the film. For VFX shots, you definitely want to add some sort of breath cycle in there. For this, I don't have to worry about it too much. Let's see. One thing with breathing is it really is just kind of another way of keeping them alive. So by having the head motion here, I'm kind of getting that effect. Yeah, so it really depends. I feel like the beginning has a little too much motion. See how fast that head is dropping right there? I want to tone that down. So I'm just going to take my curves here and scale them. Same with the head here. I like the motion, but I don't want it to feel like a big moment. It should just feel like the character is ever so slightly alive. Okay. Now, before we go to this next expression here, let's actually do a quick play blast. See how our first one is looking and kind of compare those. I also only have about 30 minutes left, so maybe we'll save the next expression for the next stream, depending on if people want me to take a look at their shots and stuff. We'll see. Or we can see how quickly I can hopefully get the next expression in. Oops, wrong camera there. Okay. Get rid of that one. So this is where we started. And then we'll see how this feels. Now, this is kind of just quick, like throwing things in. As we go, we can then refine things a lot. One thing I don't like to do is nitpick, and I was kind of nitpicking quite a bit here already, but where you're just going in and every little control you're trying to tweak and perfect. That's good, but we want to make sure that it's actually working to begin with. So here's the shot before. You can see it's just very dead. It's no real breakdowns. It's just hold a pose, transition, hold a pose, transition. Let's see how it feels with the keep alive. Much better. You can especially see how it contrasts with the last expression change there. So suddenly the character feels like they're reacting. They are not just transitioning, sliding from one pose to the next. Let's actually do this here. Let's set this to viewer B and then video. There we go. So if you kind of look, the old one is on the left, new one is on the right. As they react, you can see here the difference, where the old one, everything just kind of goes back all at the same time. We're still getting to the same pose here and here. So let me actually put my frame range in. There to there. It's the same pose, start and end. Same thing. What makes the difference is how you get there. On the left, everything just slides into place and then stops. And that's it. The one on the right has these offsets. The brow leads. Then the eyelids contrast the brow. They're going down while the brows go up. Then the mouth reacts. And the mouth changes shape. Instead of just kind of sliding from one to the next, he closes and then opens. So again, it adds that contrast. We get that arc to the mouth. Instead of, if you look on the left, how the mouth just kind of morphs and just kind of shifts into the next pose, the one on the right has that quick little whoop to the lips. And it's not much, but it adds that extra little drag and fleshiness to the face. We could definitely change the offset on the head. I feel like it's hitting a little too hard, the rotation X specifically. I think it can just ease, and instead of overlapping and overshooting, we'll just ease it and then just ease in and kind of feels like just and then pull back. Let's see. Oh wait, I'm sad I came in today. Definitely gonna watch the VOD to catch the beginning. Last project I worked on was an expression test to get more comfortable with lip sync. Nice. Yeah, lip sync tests. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. Do another one of those. Those are really fun to do. I love those. Let's see. I have a question about the lips when building the mesh. How busy can I have the polygons? I added some more loops to help me shape it, but I fear it's going to mess with the rigging process later. I haven't done too much rigging, but I actually have. Let me find this here. I actually just found some images on lip sync or lip rigging stuff. Or modeling, I should say. Let me see if I can find it super quick for you. And then hopefully the artist's name is on it. Okay. Let that load up. So while that's loading there. Oh, there you go. So. Eyelids. Okay, so here's a few tips. I forget the artist's name. Unfortunately, they didn't have a watermark. I I should find them on Twitter again and promote them properly. But these are just some nice little tips for mesh shapes when you're dealing with lips. Essentially, you want to have smooth shapes, no sharp edges. You want to make sure your polygons line up from top lip to bottom lip, and you want the corners to be nice and clean. I believe this is also... Okay, that's for the brow. Now, in terms of how much detail you need, you actually don't need that much. What I would recommend is just look at existing rigs, and this is something I do whenever I'm modeling something and I want to reduce the topology to something a little bit more manageable, is just look at how much detail is... Let's actually not do it that way. Let's do wireframe on shaded, which is Control 5. No. Shading, wireframe on shaded, Alt 5. So look at how much detail are on the lips here. Let's kind of go to a more relaxed pose. So you can see it's not a ton. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 14 polygons, 16 if you count the corners, on the top lip, and then 16 on the bottom. So that's not too bad. And that's a pretty high detailed rig here. You could, if you're doing more of a gaming rig, you could get away with less than that. So yeah, don't worry about having a ton of loops. The more loops you have, the harder it is to make tweaks, and the more it's just going to deform in weird ways. So, hopefully that helps. So we've got our animation here. Let's see. Let's take a look here. Let me actually just tweak that rotate X because that's bothering me. I don't know why it's bothering me. It shouldn't. But essentially what I want to do is just, let's tone this down here. Bring this up there. And just have this nice subtle ease. Especially for facial animation tests, it's not really about what the body is doing. We don't want to make that super complicated. Yeah, that feels better. Just kind of, it's sliding into place, but I feel it helps with the kind of like, just like pulling back and keeping that tension in there. It's not like he's knocking his head back. Let's do a quick play blast of that. And I'm going to get rid of this one. Let's see. Exactly what I need to build more confidence for my next shot. Nice. So while that's play blasting, it should be done pretty soon. Let's see. And AutoKey, hello! Let's see. Oh, I didn't hear about the Blender animation course. That's really cool. I do want to do more Blender animation when I get a chance. That would be really fun. Okay, open viewer B. And let's compare. Yeah, that's better. See how it doesn't feel like the head pops now? Instead, it feels like the head just kind of comes back and there's this nice soft ease in there. That feels much better to me. Let me reset the range here so we just have more room to play with, and then I'm just going to stop it before the facial expression change since we haven't done the last one. Okay. So if you look at the one on the left, just kind of focus on that. See how dead it is, especially the eye dart. It doesn't feel alive. The eyes just kind of shift in this weird way. The reaction is slow. It's the same amount of frames, but it feels slow. It feels dead. The one on the right, that eye dart, see how the eye dart kind of has, there's not much motion in the face. It's not like the eye dart has a ton of cool effects and the brows are doing a ton of stuff. All it is offsetting the eyeball versus the eyelid and adding just a tiny, tiny touch of keep alive to the head. Honestly though, it's the big thing is just the eyelids and the eyeball. That's it. But it makes such a big difference. So something about mouth is bugging me? Yeah, same here. What it is one is the corner right there. That shape is not great. I need to reshape the mouth there. Let's see what else is happening here. As it opens up here, I feel like this transition here could use a little bit more work. It kind of feels like it's still got a little pop to it, which it's not bad. You do want the mouth to pop, but it feels unmotivated. It's an unmotivated pop. So I just need to go in there and tweak a few of the in-betweens there. And this is where you start getting into the shaping controls and like start zipping the mouth, I guess you could say, where the corners release last, the middle releases first. Get that feeling of the muscle pulling. Like right now, this is opening from the center. Let me actually show this here. As his mouth opens, it's opening from the center of the mouth and doing kind of this ooh shape. And instead, I need to push this so it opens up from the side here, because he's pulling his mouth over this way, which this will create a more motivated feeling. As his mouth opens, we get that pull. And then here, you notice how it's kind of pulling back over to the center. This needs to get pulled over a little bit more this way. So it's a little bit of that, a little bit of the shaping. I think maybe pull that down. Let's see if I can use the zip control here. So doing something like that, keeping the mouth corners a little bit more sealed as it comes up is going to help. The teeth here, see how there's a gap between the bottom lip and the teeth? There's no gap, and then there's a gap again. That's definitely something that we don't want to have, because what that's creating is a visual pop in the mouth. So I would have to do one of two things. I would either bring the lip up here so we have a smaller separation and keep the teeth touching the lip, or bring the lip down here sooner so we just keep that negative space in there. And I'm getting a little bit of a visual pop in the teeth there. Let's see, what if the mouth ends after the head rotation? Let's see, how far off is that? We could definitely push it quite a bit. The big thing with mouth motions and any facial motion is you can move them quickly. You want to move them quickly, but you can ease them over a long period of time. So, for example, I could take like these 3 frames here. There's not a huge amount of change. So I can take this and let's add a couple more frames in there. And actually, make sure I actually select all of the mouth controls here, not just one. Okay. And let's add in another frame here and another frame here and see how that feels. So now the mouth comes in and you kind of see how you feel that mouth continuing to take shape right there. It's hitting the pose pretty much right away, but now it's shifting over. I'd probably want to ease this a little bit more. There's a few controls. Which one is this? Okay, that's the zip. Yeah, I'd want to ease this a little bit more. So something like that. So it just takes a little bit more time. And I just realized my camera froze again. Let's see. Never tried lip sync. Is it tough? It's got a lot of rules that you have to follow in order to make things read correctly. Otherwise, your lip sync is going to feel, well, it's not going to be legible. It's not going to look like the character is saying words. They're just going to be mumbling. So you have to be, it's going to be mushy, or it's just going to look like it's desynced. You have to be very specific with it. But it is fun. I love lip sync. I actually have a bunch of videos on lip sync if you want to check those out and kind of look at the typical process on lip sync, or at least I shouldn't say typical. It's my process on lip sync. Everyone has a different workflow when it comes to lip sync and that kind of stuff. The other thing about the mouth corner is this. See here, you can actually see it right there. See how the geometry is deforming? What happened here is when I was posing it out, which is kind of the thing when you're posing things out without animation, is I rotated this control right here to offset the mouth shape, but I didn't realize as I was doing that it was deforming the corner of the mouth quite a bit. Now, at this point, I could try to reset this, just take all of this and zero it out, but now it's going to ruin all of the mouth shapes for the rest of the shot. Is that a bad thing? No, but I do have to now adjust everything back. This is one of those cases where you now have to make a choice. You have to either choose to make whatever it is work with the current tool that you have. So in this case, I rotated this. Okay, how do I make this work? Well, I'll have to come in here and probably push the corners of the mouth a little bit less, or kind of tone that down some more there. Play with some of the fine-tune controls to see if I can reduce that, or I rebuild the mouth. And honestly, I might do this just in my spare time. I might just rebuild the mouth and get back into this position. Now, when I do want to do that, there are a couple of things that can be helpful. So let's say I want to rebuild the mouth. I'm going to do it in a pose where there's not too much change. I'll take all of my controls here, and I might not rebuild the whole thing, but I'll just show. I want to get this mouth shape. So I'm going to set a key and save this. On the next frame, I'm going to set another key, and let's reset this rotation here. And you can see how already that fixes the distortion here, but we're still getting a little bit there. At this point, I can go back here. Let's zoom in. I'm going to use my blue pencil plugin. You can use the grease pencil for this as well. And let's bring in our tool options. I'm going to just make the size a little bit smaller. And let's draw the mouth shape in here. So I want this shape right there. And the corners are here and here. Okay. Now I go on to the next frame, and without using the rotation that I had done before, I can just redo it. And it's going to take a little bit, but I can shape it with the other controls. Now, normally when I'm doing this, the other thing I'll do is kind of reset all my other controls here, because you don't want to have like random little bits of, well, you don't want to counter animate. You don't want to have 5 controls doing all the work. So let's kind of reset this here. Okay, that definitely got rid of that weird little pinch there. Okay. So let's move this in. Okay, I'm getting that pinch. So I'd be careful how far I bring this in. Let's do that. Keep it a little bit simpler. Let's reset the rotation on this. I want that bottom lip to be nice and simple and clean. Okay. That kind of in position there. Top lip. Let's not move it over to the side. Instead, let's rotate it. And I'm getting close to the same pose. Let's play with the zip control here. Bring that in just a little bit. And then bring this in just a little bit more. At this point, I can start using the fine-tune controls. Just start shaping that lip a little bit more. And let's actually just see what shape we're getting here. Okay, not bad. I think I can probably zip that corner a little bit more. And let's exaggerate that kind of mouth shape there. And let's compare back and forth. So you can see this was the old pose. This is the new one. Now, one thing I'm not liking about the new one is I'm missing the kind of squash in here, as well as the lip overlap, which I really like. So I want to keep that in there. So let's see how we can push that. Let's just push this a lot more here. And then a little higher. Something like that. Yeah, a little higher there. And then maybe that corner just a little up there. It doesn't have to match exactly. That's the big thing. I'm not trying to recreate the whole thing. I'm just trying to make something better. And then let's take this lip here and just kind of push it up higher. We get that overlap in the shape. This way we can kind of feel the mass of the lower lip a little bit more. There we go. So it's pretty close. Not exactly, but let's see how it looks from a distance. From a distance, you can't really tell too much of a difference. But now I have a shape that doesn't have that weird rotation and twisting in there. At this point, I would just need to reanimate the mouth. So I would take this and take this new pose that I've created, go back in, set my keys, and replace it. I'll do that on my own time here, so I don't waste time. For now, I'm just going to take this new pose and I'm going to move it out so it doesn't get in our way. There we go.